The Calgary Police Service is currently investigating a double shooting that occurred in the southwest of the city in the early hours of this morning. At approximately 3:25 this morning, Saturday, May 31st, police were called to reports of shots being fired in the 2300 block of 10th Avenue Southwest. Police flooded the area but did not locate any victims at that scene. Several people at the location were taken to the Westman's office here for further questioning. At approximately 3:35 a.m. this morning, a local area hospital called to report that two men had been admitted with gunshot wounds. One had arrived in a car, the other in a taxi cab. A man aged between 25 and 30 remains in critical condition. A 21-year-old man is being treated for minor injuries. Detectives are waiting to speak to both victims. Those taken in for questioning this morning are assisting with the investigation, but no suspects have been identified at this point. Early indications suggest this incident is linked to a private party that was being held at number 8 Weapons Fitness and MMA gym. The shootings appear to have occurred outside this location. Anybody with information is asked to call police or Crime Stoppers on the usual numbers.
Do you know if either of the victims were invited guests to the party?
Great question. Speaking to the people this morning from our witnesses, yes, they were. They were invited. They're not uninvited guests. They do know each other.
The two victims know each other?
Yes.
Were there uninvited guests?
To be honest with you, that's a great question, and the answer is I'm not sure. Detectives have spoke to a bunch of people this morning. Some people did give statements, some people decided not to. The gist of what we're getting is that the bulk of the people there were invited. There may have been the odd one or two that wandered in because of texts and tweets and Facebook and stuff, may have found out about the party. We're still looking into that.
How many people were at the party?
Estimates from the witnesses we had this morning are between 50 and 75 coming and going through the night, so fairly fluid.
Can you tell us the injuries to both victims?
The one with the more serious injuries is an upper body torso injury, and the lesser injury on the 21-year-old male is to the arm.
Do you know how many shots?
I'd rather not divulge that. It's part of the investigation.
Do you know how many shots were fired in total?
I'd rather not divulge that. That's part of the investigation.
What kind of party was this? Like, was
it was a party by invitation, so we're told. People are invited there to go for a party and have some celebration and some drinks. There was a DJ on site. It was a private party at that location.
Was it organized by the location, or were they just rented out by?
I believe it was organized by the location.
Was it a legal kind of get together? Can you do such a thing at that size?
Yeah.
Sorry to go back to the shots again, but can you say if they were hit multiple times or just a single time that it?
I'd rather not say anything about gunshots.
And in terms of another location, are you investigating another location?
We are, yes. We have the search management team out, searching south of that location, looking for further evidence, firearms, shell casings, etc. So we're still out there looking.
Can you tell us if you found anything at that second location?
Still out there looking.
And what about a suspect?
No, none identified at this point, hence the media release, and hopefully asking for anybody who's in the neighbourhood, maybe driving by, taxi cab drivers who may be in the area, maybe picked up customers who we haven't spoken to yet, if they can come forward, which is why we've given the address plus the location. If they were at that party and then left, perhaps they can come forward and speak to us now. Maybe they can shed some light on it for us.
I just mean, how concerning is this for you? You know, it's supposed to be a party and you know, 2 years at the hospital.
I think it goes without saying it's very concerning for us. Any part of the city where shots are fired is of grave concern to the police and to the public, not just for public safety, but for everybody's safety. And taking it very seriously. We've got a whole bunch of detectives working on it today, plus the search management team that will be followed up this afternoon and tomorrow and ongoing. So yeah, we take it very seriously indeed.
Is there any indication that those two victims were targeted specifically?
Don't know that at that point. We need to speak to them both, and while they're being prepped, one's just come out of surgery, one's being prepped for surgery, we still need to speak to both of those individuals. We'll know more when we speak to them. At this point, we haven't spoken to them.
So is it possible that they were hit by a random gunfire, like the stray bullet?
I wouldn't like to speculate.
But
I don't know.
Any idea of what led to the shooting and confrontation?
Part of our investigation, as far as you know, is a good-natured party, and then this happens at 2:30.
Can you give us any ideas why the victims would have self-transported to the hospital?
I have no idea. We need to speak to them. Again, part of our investigation. Without actually speaking to them yet, we really don't know.
Is there any indication it could be linked to gang or organized crime?
No indication at this point. And because they are victims in this particular case, I probably shouldn't speak to that.
Has anyone spoken to the person who delivered one of the victims to the hospital?
We haven't, no. They did leave their details, and we have yet to speak to them.
They left, the person who drove, one of the person that drove left their details?
Yes,
At the hospital?
yes, and we haven't spoke to them yet. They will be following up with them today.
And the one that went by car, you don't know if that person drove themselves or if they were driven?
Correct. Again, waiting to speak to him post-surgery.
So you have information of both drivers, the cab driver that took the other person and the driver of the private car?
Correct.
And just to clarify again, you said both the victims were invited guests to the party and they both knew each other?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Do you know what the party was for? Was it a birthday?
I don't. I'm sorry, I don't know what the party was about.
Do you know how many people were taken for questioning?
Well, we had a lot of people here this morning. I'm saying, guesstimating between 20 and 30 people were at West Winds this morning for follow-up interviews and witness statements.
How forthcoming were they with information?
Very helpful. They were here for about 3 hours, and we transported them here and we transported them home. They were very useful.
You said some declined to give information?
Some did. Hopefully got their information. We can follow up with them later. Obviously, it's a big shock. Witnessing or listening to a traumatic incident like this can be very upsetting for people. So we'll connect with them next week, and when things have settled down a little bit, and maybe they'll be more likely to speak to us.
Do you have any indication of what kind of weapon was used?
Handgun is what we know at this point. Again, still searching for it in the local area, and detectives are trying to determine what that weapon was.
And tell us how many cases were found?
I'd rather not.
Are you using search and rescue?
We're using search management team, which is sworn officers rather than civilian members, because we are looking for firearms and evidence.
So sorry, just so I'm clear, it's believed one of the two victims drove himself to the hospital and the other went in a cab?
So one went to the hospital in a taxi cab, so driven by a taxi driver, obviously. The second victim was taken there by an individual whose details we have.
Okay, so.
Does that help?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the victim wasn't the only person in the car.
No.
Someone drove him.
No, correct.
Okay, and you have the details of that driver?
Correct,
And
but we
also
haven't.
the cab driver?
Yes, but we haven't spoke to the driver yet. We've spoken to the taxi driver.
Okay. And did you tell us what hospital?
Foothills.
Both of them went there?
Both to the Foothills Hospital, yes.
And why is it that you've expanded the search south of the
Based on the witness evidence, it would seem that there seemed to be a swathe of people going in that direction. So it makes sense that if there was a weapon that was going to be tossed away or thrown into the undergrowth, then that would be the spot to go. So we need to rule that out, that there's nothing lying there, for someone else to pick up and something of evidence that we need. So we're going to clear that area as best we can and then move on to the next search area.
And any indication that maybe an altercation or fight had started inside where the party was and then moved outside?
None whatsoever, not to my knowledge.
Any surveillance footage that's been taken?
Obviously canvassing the area, local stores, 7-Elevens, that type of stuff. To be honest with you, I don't know if we have any of that.
None of the attendees have video? Or do you know that?
I'm going to assume that our detectives are going to ask them if they had their videos, their phones going, iPhones, etc. We may have. I don't know.
Do you expect to speak to the victims today?
Well, one has had surgery this morning and is currently in ICU, so unlikely we'll speak to him, and probably until early next week, I would think. Excuse me, the second victim is being prepped for surgery, so we're going to let our friends at the Foothills do what they do best, and then we'll speak to them after them.
The one that had surgery, that was the more serious case?
Yes, that was the upper torso injury.
What time did everything happen, like the party? When people started arriving?
No idea. I'm guessing when the bars downtown kind of finished, or maybe it's been running on sequentially, so it could have been after town, or it could have been part of. I don't know.
You mentioned it was a good-natured party.
Yep, seemed to be what the witness was saying. It was in good spirits.
Do you expect them to have more for us this afternoon? Or
Until we've spoken to both victims, likely not, unless there's some major evidentiary piece that we need you to help us find. Then I don't think so, probably in the form of a media release. But we need to speak to those two individuals at the hospital, obviously, and obviously we're not going to interfere with their medical treatment. I want them to be in a good place until we speak to them. So probably not today, maybe tomorrow, maybe early next week.
how about you said you were going to be speaking to the person that drove
And I'll leave that for the detectives who are working on that today. They're currently at the foothills trying to speak to one of the victims right now.
Do you know what the relationship between the two victims is?
I do not.
They're not related, as far as you know, or?
I don't know. I don't believe they are.
Okay. And in terms, I know you haven't pinpointed any suspects, but is it believed that there was just one person involved in the shooting, or a group, or?
We don't know. And that's why we need your assistance in finding that out. We need to know what happened, and obviously we weren't there. The witnesses this morning gave us some great information, but we'd like some more. We're not quite sure what actually happened that got these two individuals shot this morning.
Can you tell us if they're Calgarians?
They are, because they live here. I believe both of them are from Toronto.
They live in Calgary, though,
But they have Toronto roots, yes.
Both of them have Toronto roots?
Yes.
And were they shot just outside the doors of the gym?
I haven't been to the scene, but that's where I'm told, yes. And the parking lot adjacent to.
Do you know if they're gym patrons? Are they really connected to that gym?
I think the party patrons. I don't think they have any real connection to that gymnasium, but I'm not sure because we haven't spoken to them yet.